It's the coronavirus quarantine concert for the free world, featuring Joe Rinaudo at the Style 20 American Fotoplayer. And now, here's those 3 magic words. Hit it, Joe!
Welcome everybody. Well, this is an American Fotoplayer, and this is the coronavirus, I gotta say it right, the coronavirus quarantine concert, brought to you live from my living room with Style 20 American Fotoplayer. But now we're going to do another roll for you, so hold on to your hats. Anyway, some of you may recognize that as the theme song, of course, to the Warner Brothers cartoons, The Merry-Go-Round Broke Down.
If anybody has any questions for Joe, feel free to share in the comments, and we will take questions later on.
So, I guess I'll demonstrate. You're seeing two spool boxes here. So, what this was a silent motion picture player. It played for silent movies. This would sit down in the orchestra pit, being it's only 5 feet tall, so it had a low profile, so the projector could shoot over its top. There were rolls made by the Film Music Company of Hollywood, and these were specifically designed to play for silent films, and they were mood. It was mood music, and these rolls were, of course, very unusual because they have different moods. The first one is called Tears. It's very sad. And the second roll is going to be a chase roll. And I'm going to demonstrate how the operator in the theater would have changed the music instantly when the scene changes. So let's say the first scene is going to be sad. So we're going to program it with violin, we're going to put trem, and bass. Okay, so now we're going to start with Tears. This is a sad scene. Comes along and he chases the villain. So you get the idea. These rolls were just cues. Sadly, there aren't very many that survive because when silent movies ended, they were usually brought home to put on a player piano, and they didn't play very well on a player because they were cut for a pipe organ, so the holes were longer. I guess I can demonstrate some of the sound effects that you've heard during the opening. This has pull cords. They called these cow pullers because it was like milking a cow. This is chime, and then you have locomotive or steamboat whistle. You have wind, or maybe Curly Howard. And you have a crash cymbal, bass drum, tom-tom, and then gunshot. And you have also over here a cowbell, telephone or doorbell, snare drum, horse's hooves or somebody running down the road, castanets, tambourine, klaxon. You also have a bulb horn for earlier automobiles, so you could have two cars coming at each other, or a traffic jam. You have triangle, bird whistle, and sleigh bells. And on the console here, you have pipes. You have bass pipes. And you have principals, which are a very neutral pipe, a flute, and violin, and those funny quacking things that you heard earlier called tubas. So with this and the piano and, of course, a xylophone, you could change the mood as you saw fit to match the screen action. Anyway, maybe I'll put on a couple more rolls.
Just
Yes,
not to
ma'am.
interrupt,
Yeah.
someone did ask how many sounds it makes, and I know you went through all of them. Do you know a number of how many sounds the machine actually makes?
Well, let's see. We have 8. About, it looks like 18 sound effects.
Okay.
And this is the small machine. The larger machines had maybe as many as 30 sound effects and 600 pipes.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I'm looking here. Hi, everybody. All right. Let's see. So now we're going to go to Mr. Scott Joplin. Now the operator of the machine could either play home player rolls which you could go down to the music shop and pay 25 cents for, $1 or whatever, and get a roll. And of course, there was no duty to be paid. It was just a piano roll. And or you could use the film music rolls. But during intermission, a lot of the time they would play home player rolls because they were more fun. I should say they were more toe tap.
How many rolls do you have, Joe?
Okay, how many rolls do I have? We have, of the picture rolls, there were 1,300 known to be cut. I have 1,260 of the 1,300, which is the largest collection in the world. And we just did a show at the Academy. Gary Gibson, my assistant, and I did a show at the Academy. We narrated an hour-and-a-half feature called Two Arabian Nights. Some of you may have been there. And we used all film music rolls and used the giant photo player down there, the Ford Style 41 that we restored for them. And it was a lot of fun. A lot of young people came, and that's what's so important, for them to hear something like that. So I have about 1,260 picture rolls, and then probably 4,000 just regular player rolls, which is small by collector standards, believe me.
Some people are asking to get a closer look at the rolls. Would you mind showing closer to the camera the box and the roll itself?
Yeah, well, here. Let me get I'll show you what the box looks like. Here, you can see this is the real race. Real race, can you see that? There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. And it says, for races of all kinds, Allegro number 10 by M.L. Lake. Okay, I'm going to open this one because that one's a recut. I want to show them what an original looks like. See these dates on here? Those dates are when the theater played the role. And they would date them so they didn't overdo it and play it too many times. So let's see. The last date on this roll is August 14th. No, December 11th, 1928. Yeah, how do you like that? Anyway, so I'm sorry. Okay, what these holes do. I'll show you something here. If you play a regular home player roll like this one on a player piano that is made for a player piano, you have short holes. See the tiny holes? They're short because a piano decays right away. The instant it plays, it quiets down, and then you go on to the next note. So they're short, choppy little holes to make a piano sound like a piano. The problem with American Fotoplayer was it has a pipe organ attached. And by the time the piano is doing the short little note and going on to the next one, the pipe organ is missing the note or barely playing it because the piano's gone on to the next note. So what film music rolls did, and this was their undoing when they were taken home after silent movies ended, is they increased the length of the holes to play the organ and the piano, of course, at the same time. But it gave the organ power, and it helped the piano build power along with the organ as they were partnered on these holes. So that's your basic difference, your long and short holes. I'm going to play a few home player rolls on this, and you may hear the difference, and then you may not. Okay, so what do we have here? We have, okay, we are going to go to, next, we have this one.
And just to let everybody know, we're taking down questions, so
Yeah,
if your
anybody has
question
any
wasn't
questions,
answered, it will be answered shortly
please.
in between upcoming songs.
Upcoming songs, that's right. Doggone it, dagnubbit, consort it. All right, next roll in the series is Something Doing, right? And then are we going In My Harem, or, yeah, here we go. Nothing like organization, right?
Something doing then Abadabba.
All right, here we go. Okay, this is Abadabba. There we go. All right, see? Okay, the next one is by Scott Joplin, called Something Doing. Joplin?
We had one more question.
One more question, all right.
When was the photoplayer last used?
When was the photoplayer last used? Well, they were created about 1912, and they ended their run in 29 when sound came in, but they were used as late as the early 30s in vaudeville houses and cabarets. And of course, some theaters still ran silent motion pictures, so they hung on for a couple of years. I would say the early 30s would see the last of them, sadly. Out of the 4,500 made, there's only about 51 known to be in the world left, but most of them are in deplorable condition. There are only 12 that play worldwide. And this is one of the 12, fortunately.
And how old is this machine?
This was the last year of production. It was built in Van Nuys, California in 1926. And that's when they went bankrupt. And they were absorbed by their subsidiary company, the Robert Morton Theater Organ Company, absorbed them, and photoplayer disappeared. Next, we're going to do a little fun thing, a novelty piece called the Abba Dabba Honeymoon. With xylophone.
Should we take some more questions?
Any more questions?
All right, so a lot of people want to know, how heavy is it?
How heavy is it? That's a good question. The piano is 6 inches taller than a regular piano, a standard piano. It has a big heavy plate inside, so to get the sound at the back of the theater. So the piano alone weighs over 900 pounds, and the cabinet with the pipes is about 1,100. So this thing weighs 1 ton, believe it or not. I actually shored up in the basement, I put braces underneath it, just in case of earthquake. They were pretty heavy. Sadly, that's why they were all pretty much thrown away after the silent film era ended. Who wanted this big heavy thing down in the pit? So off to the dump they went.
And some people want to know, how did you acquire the machine, and who taught you how to play, or how did you learn how to play?
Well, that's a good question. Well, first of all, how I learned to play it was probably general insanity, but no. I found this, well, when I was a kid, we had a player piano in the house. And I grew to love player pianos and rolls and the music of that era. And I like silent movies. I collect silent movies. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool to make the player piano play with the silent movies? Well, unfortunately, our player piano only had 1 spool box. So I went out and found a junk player piano, and I was going to put 2 spool boxes in it. And this old-time piano rebuilder said, "Hey, kid, what are you fooling with that stuff for? Why don't you buy one of them photo players?" Now, this is probably 1968. I go, "What's a photo player?" He says, "They're a piano that already has 2 spool boxes in it for silent film use." I go, wow, somebody else thought of it. So I said, "Where would I find one?" He says, "Well, there's this place down in Santa Fe Springs called Hathaway and Bowers." So I went down there. Here I'm a kid going in there, you know, like 16, 17 years old. And I go in there, and these guys are, you know, very stuffy and very serious. And, well, we have these photo players here. They're $10,000. I'm going, whoa, you know, way out of a kid's price range. Anyway, they sold out to another company, and I went down there to see if they were having any bargains. And this machine was for sale. It was at somebody's house. So I drove over to the guy's house, and it was $4,500. And I thought, wow, it's pretty clean, but... So I forgot about it. I said, I don't have the money. About 6 months went by. The man, Mr. Barnes, who owned it, called me up and said, "Hey, you still want to buy that photo player?" So anyway, I said, "Yeah." He goes, $3,500, and I'll refinish it for you, and I'll help you deliver it. I said, I couldn't pass it up. So that's how I got it. In 1973, I bought it. It took me 3 years to restore it. And this came from a theater in Saskatchewan, Canada. It was built in Van Nuys, California, and shipped up to Saskatchewan. And when they tore the theater down, they discovered it under the stage. It was like King Tut's tomb. It was sealed in almost mint condition, unrestored condition. And the man, Mr. Barnes, was Canadian. His family wrote him a letter and said, "Hey, look what they found." He flew up there and bought it. And then when he got it down here, his wife said, "If you restore that thing in our living room, you're dead." So that's why he put it up for sale. And so I've had it now all these years. So it's a fun thing.
If someone wanted to buy one of these now, how much would it cost? Or if someone is selling them now?
Okay, that's a good question. One just traded a big one, a big model, just sold for $300,000.
Oh, wow. A
machine like this would probably sell for, I'm guessing, a restored machine like this would probably sell for between $150 and $225 because they're so rare. The secret with these machines is if you can buy one unrestored, then if you know somebody that can help you restore it, you're going to save maybe $100,000. It's the labor that costs so much to restore this. Fortunately, a good friend of mine, Dave Hartman, helped me restore this, who's a mechanical and a pneumatic genius, and I owe this restoration to him. And the one at the Academy, he helped restore the one. He did restore the one at the Academy. We both did. And sadly, Dave is now almost 80 years old, and we're all getting old, guys. You got to have some young people come along and save this stuff. Okay, what's this? Song! I got the hook, folks. Okay, here we go. All right, so now we're going to do a tune called "In My Harem." This is a novelty piece that a theater might have played at intermission. You know, they say that imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, and I was quite honored. One of my favorite comedians is Fred Willard. The man is a comic genius. And I was asked by Netflix if I would lend some of my music to them to do a show, a comedy show. And the comedy show was called I Think You Should Leave Now, or I Think You Should Leave, which is on Netflix. And little did I know, not only would they use the music of this machine, but they dressed Fred Willard up as me. They somehow created a Style 20 photo player, and I had him playing a funeral. And someone asked me, are you, what did you think of that? And I said, I think it's fantastic. I think it's the funniest dang thing I've ever seen. So if you want to see it, Fred Willard playing an American Fotoplayer, Style 20, at a funeral. It's a blast. Where he got the plate idea from, I'll never know. Maybe he has Greek ancestry. The other one that copied me was Disney, quite flatteringly, in a Milo Murphy's Law cartoon titled The Little Engine That Couldn't, C-O-U-L-D-N-T. So again, if you want to see what an old-timer looks like in suspenders playing one of these things in a Disney cartoon, you can go on their server, whatever it is. I'm not sure. I don't know. If it doesn't have a crank, I don't know what it is. Anyway, any other questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
What is your favorite sound effect, Joe?
My favorite sound effect, there's two. There's one back here that I haven't looked up yet. Let's see if you can guess what this is. Okay, that's one. The other one this machine doesn't have, and it's called a baby cry. And I mean, this thing sounds like some sort of a tortured soul, let me tell you. It's this antelope bleat and baby cry. Why did they unionize the both? Let's see. On this repertoire, I would say everybody's favorite is the wind siren.
And Joe, how do you know when to play the sound effects? Do you have like a sheet with cues, or do you just know the music so well?
I just know the music, and my mom, so frustrating, my mom had the ability to listen to something on the radio and then sit down at the player piano we had and play it only in the key of C, kind of like Mozart. She never had any music lessons. And it frustrated me because I couldn't play. So I taught myself to play a tune off of a piano roll. I watched the note, the keys go down, but it wasn't the same. And I tried to play the clarinet, and that was a miserable failure. So I'm not musical. But maybe vicariously I'm living musically through this machine. It gives me the cues, and I just fill them in with sound effects. And so, yeah, sometimes you can watch the notes and you know what they're going to do, and you can anticipate a drum pull or a gong or a funny sound effect. You just feel for it. You just have a feel. Okay, here we go. I've been told it's time for another song, folks. This is very unique. This is called Entry of the Gladiators by Fuchik. Now, this is a film music picture roll with steroids. This thing, it takes a 3 or 4 hand version and it makes it sound like a full orchestra. Now you're going to see what the long and the short holes do when they're mixed together with this organ. This is for circuses of all kinds. Okay, without further ado, Entry of the Gladiators by Fuchik. Can you imagine what the people must have felt like when they heard one of these things? Oh yes, let's get rid of that. Belting out the music for the silent movie they were watching. They sure had fun toys, didn't they? All right, now on to one of my most favorite films of all time, The Great Race. As you know, in the beginning, they show a glass lantern slide show. In the background is playing a player piano. This roll is the exact version that was used in the film. This was cut from the original roll. So this is called the Sweetheart Tree, and it's the theme for The Great Race. So without further ado, the Sweetheart Tree. From The Great Race. Thank you, Blake Edwards. A film dedicated to Laurel and Hardy.
So we've got a few more questions here.
Shoot.
Some questions about...
Oh! Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Some questions about the rolls. Do people still make the rolls? Are they still being made? Or
Yes, they are, in very limited form, unfortunately. There are a few people that are recutting rolls in the country. I think Ed Guida is still doing it, I hope. God bless him. Ed Guida's in his 80s, and he's still holding the flame, keeping the torch bright, trying to keep this stuff alive. There's maybe a handful, 5 or 6, in the United States that are still cutting piano rolls. Yeah, sadly.
And do they wear out easily? How many times can you play a roll?
Well, it's like anything else. Those rolls, the picture rolls, like this particular roll here is from 1916. So it's 104 years old. You can see the paper's aciding, but if you take great care with it, it'll last probably another 40 years. But it's always good. It's like with digital technology. You should always upgrade and upgrade. All the stuff needs to be recut on fresh paper, but to what end? It would cost a fortune to do that, sadly. But they last maybe 100 years, a roll.
Is there a roll you wish you had in your collection?
Yes. There's one I can't find. It's etude number, oh God, now I'm drawing a blank. Number 10 by Chopin. I had a roll of it, had an original roll, and I traded it for a print of The Wizard of Oz. That print has now turned red, and it's gone away, and I wish I had the roll. I haven't been able to find one anywhere. But it's the theme to the golden age of comedy, and that's what got me hooked on. I don't know how many of you saw the golden age of comedy on black and white television, but that introduced me to Laurel and Hardy and all the silent film stars at Max Sennett, and it was just a masterpiece by Robert Youngson, and that's the theme. So,
I have a few more questions here. So how challenging is it to maintain the photo player and to tune, and how difficult is it to find parts, or do you have to make the parts?
Well, that's a good question. Finding the parts is impossible. You usually have to make them, or if something is missing, you can borrow a part. I've lent a lot of pieces to other collectors that were missing parts to their machines, and they've copied them, because basically it's made out of brass and wood and steel. Very simple to reproduce. Maintenance, very low. These things were built like tanks. They were designed to run from 10 in the morning till midnight, 7 days a week. And sadly, by the end of their run, they were probably worn out and reduced to kindling. Most of them are in deplorable conditions. The ones that have not been restored yet are just in deplorable condition. But maintaining this, all you have to do is put a little graphite here every now and then, tune the drum heads. Really, there's very little maintenance. This restoration is 45 years old, and I'm building a movie theater at the back of my house, and I'm going to install this in there in the orchestra pit, and I'm going to rebuild it again. So this is kind of its swan song. When I tear it down, it'll probably be down for about a year. So, my gosh, 45 years. Oof.
How often do you play the machine? I
try to play it at least once a week, because like anything with an automobile or any kind of machinery, you have to keep things moving and limber, or corrosion will build up on the little valve pins and things, and they'll get sticky. So it really helps to play it at least once a week for maybe 10 minutes, 2 rolls, 3 rolls. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite movie to play to? I
do. Laurel and Hardy and Big Business. A masterpiece. That's the one where they're selling Christmas trees to a man, and he gets mad at them, and he ends up destroying their truck, and they end up destroying his house, tit for tat. Hilarious stuff. Works well with a photo player.
This is a question that I got overwhelmingly when I posted the video on Twitter.
Okay.
Do your neighbors get angry with you? Do you get complaints from your neighbors?
Yes. They say, "Why do you shut the doors? We want to hear it." I always keep my doors shut, and one of them came knocking on the door. I went, "Uh-oh." And he said, "Hey," my neighbor next door, he says, "would you please leave your door open? We love to hear that machine." So now I open the windows when it's summertime, and funny thing is, sometimes kids will come up to the door. They'll hear it, and they'll come up. It's like a calliope, you know. It draws people. So it's a happy sound. It's a fun sound.
All right. Maybe another song?
Sure. We always have. Now this one is from the, this is from the, what's that? You have another question? Oh, you know what? Maybe we should try something fun.
Sorry
Talk
about that.
Fun toys. Okay, so in 1878, we know that Mr. Edison was working on the electric light bulb. And I think it was J.P. Morgan. He had several investors who had given him a lot of money to create the light bulb. Well, Mr. Edison, being an inventor, thought it would be fun if he could take the human voice and record it onto something and then play it back. So he used the money, it is said, from his investors for the electric light to build this. It's called a tinfoil phonograph, and this is the E. Hardy model. This is the second or third model that he built. The first model was a laboratory model that he did. Mary Had a Little Lamb, you know, and all that on. And then he had the Brady model. But anyway, he built this one. He had E. Hardy in France because he didn't want the American investors to find out what he was doing. So he found a manufacturer in France that could build these things. And I don't know how many he made, but Mr. Ray Phillips, who was a friend of mine who's now passed away, had an original one. And he let me borrow it. And we took it apart carefully, made molds, and we reproduced 25 for collectors. Because the originals are so valuable, they're worth like $50,000. Everybody's afraid to touch them or change them. But this is an exact reproduction, and it can be used and played with. And if you break it, you just make another part. It's not a problem. So this is the E. Hardy tinfoil phonograph from 1878. And his investors did find out. He sent these out free of charge just to show, hey, look what the Edison company's doing. We have put the human voice on tinfoil, and we can play it back. How do you like that? So this little machine right here started the entire recording industry, gave it its start, which of course involved piano rolls. So from 1878, we have Edison's E. Hardy tinfoil phonograph. And I hope nothing goes wrong, but here we go. So with trembling hand, Mr. Edison closed the gate. I'm not going to do Mary Had a Little Lamb, however, but what I am going to do is... Hello, hello, hello! This is Joe Rinaudo speaking to you. I hate the coronavirus! Ha, ha, ha! And with trembling hand, Mr. Edison opened the gate and rewound his tinfoil cylinder thingy-do-bopper, his mandrel. And we don't want to jam it. And there we go. We close the gate. Here we go. And thus, the recording industry had its beginning. He was asked, he was told by Morgan and other people, you will not play with that phonograph. You will soak those patents, and you will get the electric light. So he let the patents soak, and that's what happened. They were in storage for a long time, and other people, Berlinger, copied him, had the idea. They got around his patents and created the phonograph, and Mr. Edison could never catch up. So, sadly. Okay, back.
Couple more songs?
Oh, a couple more songs. Is that what we want? Okay.
Oh, sorry. What's that called again? This
is called, and the name of the company was E. Hardy, E as in Edward, Hardy Manufacturing Company. This is an 1878 Edison tinfoil phonograph recording device. It was considered a laboratory instrument. So as you can see, you can wind it back. It'll play back about 10 times before the tinfoil wears out. And so can you imagine people could... He made the mandrel very small, but... So you could take this thing anywhere, on picnics, and you could make recordings. And I did a test one time. I had some of my friends come in, and I had the wives left the room. And I had one of the husbands make a recording, and I had the wives come back, and I played it back, and I said, tell me whose voice that is. And the wife picked it out. And I said, brother, you're in trouble. Anyway, all right. Now, okay, so from the sublime to the ridiculous. This is a march called the Hour of Triumph. And we're going to put the photoplayer through its paces here on this one. And then from there, we're going to go to the ocean. Okay, so, the Hour of Triumph. This is something that might have been played in the theater in intermission. the Sea. And this is a cute little number, a novelty number called By the Sea, which you will remember, I'm sure, when you hear it, from cartoons. By the Sea.
We'll take a few more questions here.
Sure, of course.
Someone wants to know if there are any roles for modern songs.
Yes, yes. They've cut Beatles music. They were, in fact, the QRS roll company. I don't know if they're still in business. I believe they've gone out of business. But they were cutting brand new music from movies. So when Star Wars came out, yes, you could get Star Wars on piano roll. So musicals, everything were cut on piano roll. And they're out there.
And have you taught anybody? Have you ever had any students?
Yes, I did at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. That's where the big photoplayer, I donated the large photoplayer down there that I play occasionally. But we had some classes, but the funding ended, and it's sad. But now there's a resurgence now that the museum is about to open. They're thinking of having me train some young people, musicians. There's a man by the name of Ed Torres who plays at the Old Town Music Hall.
He's watching.
Are you Ed? Hello, Ed. You're a fantastic performer. He's expressed an interest to learn how to play the American Fotoplayer, and I would be honored to have such a musician take over for me at the Academy. I am getting old, and as you can see, my performance of the 12th Street Rag wasn't like it was 10 years ago. Anyway, Ed, and to all you people out there, thank you for keeping this stuff alive, okay? It needs to be saved.
Someone wants to know what you mean by novelty when you're referring to the songs.
Oh, novelty is a musical term which usually refers to like a light little bright ditty, like a novelty number could be By the Sea. It's just a silly little happy number that you sing along with. Picture rolls were similar to that. They say novelty, and it was usually a light-hearted little piece like that.
So you say there's so few of these in existence and even fewer that are actually in working condition. What is the community of photoplayer owners like? Do you know each other? Do you exchange information? Are there any conventions or gatherings?
That's a very good question. The answer is no. Most of these, unfortunately, are in private hands. They're owned by collectors that really do not have a primary interest in them as a motion picture player. They're just an instrument that they have in their collection that they play occasionally, and then they go on to something else, showing their guests another machine. So they don't have the care and love, not that they're they're not doing a great thing by preserving them and keeping them alive, but there are none in a public venue that I know of. There's only one at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences at the Linwood Dunn, and in Australia at the Powerhouse Museum. They have a Style 20, fully operational.
Steel Clock Museum in...
the who?
The Steel Clock Museum in Amsterdam.
Do they have an American?
Yeah.
Ooh, so there's 3 now. That's wonderful. Wow. Do they play it regularly?
Well,
That's a Style 25. That's right. I heard about that in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
Okay. So there are 3. There are 3. And of course, if any of you want any more information about this machine, you can always go to my website. It's silentcinemasociety.org. And you can subscribe, and I'll tell you about upcoming shows. And maybe they'll be here because of the virus. Yeah, I guess one more. Or do you have any more questions? Or
Yeah, so
okay.
Music and film, silent film is your hobby, but what is your profession?
My profession is I manufacture lighting. And what's funny, what got me into the lighting industry was this. When my photoplayer came, it didn't have the light, and I didn't know how to make it. So I went down to this old lamp manufacturer, Mr. David Sennett, down in downtown LA, and he showed me how to manufacture, roll the metal, and buy the parts. And so I went and got a license, a business license, just to manufacture lights for photoplayers. And I did make them for some of those collectors I was speaking about earlier. And then that got me interested. Some of my friends' wives said, hey, can you make Victorian lights? Can you do this? And I said, why not? And so it was the American Fotoplayer that got me hooked in the lighting business. So that's my trade.
All right. Are we ready for last song?
You want to do the last wild thing? Are we ready,
Yeah.
folks?
All right.
Okay, folks, here we go. I don't know if I'm going to survive this. This is E.T. Paul. E.T. Paul was probably one of the most crazed individuals on the planet. He did wonderful music. This is called The Battle of Gettysburg. I'm going to try to augment it a little bit. But if you can just close your eyes and envision a battle. It'll be me trying to operate this thing. Okay, are you ready? The Battle of Gettysburg by E.T. Paul, as played on a Style 20 Special American Fotoplayer. I don't do this very often. Don't forget, how'd that get in there? Anyway, that's why I don't do many ET Pulse. See, I don't have to go to a gym. I can stay here during the coronavirus and have a workout. Anyway, thank you guys. I guess we're done, huh? I know I am.
Thanks for
Thank you
tuning
for-
in, everybody, and
thank
sending
you,
in your
guys.
questions.
Let me know what you think. Bye.